Welcome to the Cat and Nat Parenting Unfiltered podcast, where we talk all things tweens and teens. This one is a huge one, puberty. If you've been following for a while, I have such a hard time wrapping my head around puberty. I don't know why, you guys. I don't know why it's so tricky for me, because girl puberty makes so much sense to me. Girl puberty feels like it happens, it wraps up around 14, and then it's done. It feels very, very logical, I guess, and a timeline which I can completely grasp and comprehend. And then boy puberty, I feel like it starts, it stops, it goes, they grow. It feels like such a mishmash, and that things aren't linear. You could have a 12-year-old that looks 18 and you could have an 18-year-old that looks 12. I don't know many girls that have that. I feel like most girls at 14 might look 18, but all of them are fairly developed by 14, in my humble experience, which, listen, is not a lot, but I have 2 girls. Nat has one, so we've had 3 girls, and I have all of their friends around me, and I feel like it's been fairly straightforward. And I guess I am a girl, so it makes more sense to me, but puberty in general is, I don't know how to talk about it with my son. I don't know. The girls, I'm very open about periods, and I'm very open about what happens to your body. I actually can't talk about boys because I don't know what happens, and maybe that's half the problem, is other than everything growing and pubes and maybe the occasional wet dream here and there, I don't know what else to say to they're voice changing, to normalize puberty for them. But obviously they have changes going on as well, and they also might be like, what the hell? Because hormones come into effect, and I guess there is chin hair and face hair, and you can talk about, hygiene with them and grooming, but the whole thing, I just feel very lost and very out of touch with puberty. That's why these experts are so important. It is with Cara and Vanessa, and because basically they're saying in general that puberty is starting earlier than ever before. So what's interesting though is it is not necessarily meaning that people are finishing earlier. It just means they're starting earlier, and it seems to be taking more time, which is sort of weird, but I guess fine. I think, for girls, you can definitely see changes earlier. And I think that, what a lot of people don't talk about is weight fluctuations, especially for girls. And I think, and boys, actually, I would say all the kids sort of get a different shape and a different, they almost get puffy before they grow up. And I think that's a really important thing to understand, that the kids need calories and they need the food that they're inhaling when it feels like so much, because so much is going on. And I can say all of my kids did get, even me, I think you get softer sort of before you get a massive growth spurt, which makes so much sense. It's kind of like what babies do. The babies go, they get tiny and chubby and you love it, and then they grow. And that's what teenagers need too, and tweens. And I think so many parents don't understand that when that's sort of sometimes I think when, and I'm totally just making this a conversation, I can't back it up, but from my experience, I know that when kids' bodies begin to change, I think that's when we can begin to scrutinize. And, if my girls and my boys need something of a different size because it no longer fits, even a month later, that is where I'll put my money. I don't want them to think that if they don't fit into something, it's because their body has changed for the negative. So if they're uncomfortable, if it doesn't fit, it is such a priority for me to make sure that all of my kids feel comfortable in their clothing. And I'll tell you, sometimes it changes within 2 months. They were one size and not necessarily got taller, but maybe they got wider, which often needs to happen too for them to grow. So I think puberty in all has stemming so much what we just but we ignore a lot of, because we're just misinformed and we don't know how to talk to them about it. I think it's just sort of something that happens, or you hope that happens, and you're like, did you get through it okay? Were you good? Because I made it. Did you make it? And I think that if we can help them understand what's happening, it might be more helpful for them, and maybe reduce some anxiety and stress around that whole sort of harsh time of puberty and middle school and high school. and understanding that your bodies change and that is what they're supposed to do. The rapid growth that happens between 12 and 18 is just so crazy. So giving them, grace and understanding that sometimes when you're an athlete and you're trying to do sports and you just get your period, that would be hard. Or when you are a boy or your body just grows exponentially, say in a few months, and girl, and you no longer have the hand-eye coordination you used to have, give yourself a minute to recalibrate because your body is going at such a rapid pace that to expect these kids to be 10 out of 10 all the time is so intensely insane because I think it puts so much pressure on them when they're doing their best to just navigate puberty and they wake up and their body is foreign. Their center of gravity is off. Everything is kind of like a little bit different and it's really hard to pinpoint when you've never been through it before, aka them. There is like a definite clear trend that menstruation before the age of 11 and the number of kids menstruating before the age 9 have doubled, which is sort of terrifying, to be honest with you. Considering I have a 9-year-old and I cannot imagine. However, I think Nat's mom worked out of school and I want to say she thought most of them got their period before they left grade 6. And that's like 11, 12. And with that, she knew that because she worked in the office and they would come down and have to call their mom or something would happen. So I feel like that's been happening for a while, but maybe the average was higher. For some reason, I feel like for us, it was grade 7. Like most people got their period in grade 7. The reasons why it's happening early, they're really unsure. Chemicals, which is terrible. Genetics, lifestyle, all of those things. But talking to kids when they're really young about puberty, I think we just have to normalize it, to be honest with you. It happens to everybody. At what age? Nobody knows. Like, I always tell my kids, I don't know when your body's going to grow. I don't know what size you're going to be. I don't know what your puberty is going to look like because only your body knows. You don't even know. The doctors don't even know. We can kind of give you a guesstimate, but everyone's experience is going to be so different. And I think just giving them sort of grace and freedom to move within that time without being hypercritical, without, making them feel bad about the way they look, without over scrutinizing them, just understanding that they're growing at such a rapid pace that they need to figure out who they are and what they look like and who they look like in grade 6 isn't who they're going to look like in grade 9. And also, I don't mean to bring TikTok into this, but the way girls look in grade 9 now, if I had to wear what they wear, if that was cool, I would die. Like, I would have died. The bathing suits go up your butt. The tops are basically bras. That element alone of having to navigate when you're not really sure about your body is just, and the focus on their butts and the boys and their muscles, and it is a whole different time. And the height, if you're a tall girl, a short boy, oh my gosh, the whole narrative is so much. And I think we forget that society is talking about these narratives constantly, like constantly. And they hear it even if at home we're not talking about it because they have access to cell phones and to the digital age where it opens up everybody's opinion. I really do think that it's important that we control the narrative at home and send the messages we want them to hear so we're not leaving it up to this abyss of the internet. Listen, I could go on about this forever just because I think it really is an important topic. And I think we think biology will just take care of puberty, but it is a stressful time. And I do think that as parents, we can help normalize it and make them feel a little bit less alone, awkward, unsure of what to do. When you see everyone wearing string bikinis and you have a full bush, it's very confusing. And I think that if we don't talk about what happens to your body and what those girls are doing to wear those bathing suits, you can feel very isolated, alone, confused, like there's something wrong with you, the boys too. So I think that as parents and, in this community, it's something that we need to normalize because all of us went through it and everyone's going to go through it. So it is something that is in our lives for all of us. Take a listen to our amazing experts. They help break down even more of what's going on and help us learn how to talk to them about it and just normalize this very uncomfortable journey that our kids don't want to talk about with us. and we don't want to talk about with our kids, but when can we start? How do we start? Where? Let's take it away with our experts.
Welcome to the podcast. We're so excited for this conversation, not only because we have a bunch of kids,
puberty
kids, but also everyone who's listening is either doesn't have one yet, is going to have one, or somehow went through it. We're here with Cara Natterson, MD.
I like that, MD. Do you call you doctor or MD?
Just call
Is
me
MD
Cara.
doctor?
Medical
MD
doctor.
is doctor, medical doctor.
Thank
It's
you.
like,
She's
it's
a
redundant.
pediatrician and a New York Times best-selling author. And then there's Vanessa Kroll here. Vanessa Kroll Bennett is a puberty educator and writer. Together they host the Puberty podcast, run Order of the Magnitude, the leading brand dedicated to flipping puberty positive, and they wrote the forthcoming book, This Is So Awkward, Modern Puberty Explained. Perhaps their biggest cred, however, is that between them they parent six teens. Oh my gosh, how old are these teens?
They are, my four are almost 21, almost 18, 15, and 13. It's a shit show.
We have the common parent, which this is for, and it's so interesting because so much of the conversations are like, at what age do I talk about, like, let's just say sex right off the bat. Okay, so what age do I talk about sex? Now, the only reason I'm bringing this question up is because sex and body parts and what happens to your body kind of go together, right? So if you're not talking about, they don't know about sex, they're not really going to know about puberty. Is that sort of like the...
Yeah. So the answer to your question is now. Doesn't matter how old your kids are now, right?
What
so,
age is that?
Yeah, now, like any age. So we are big believers in conversation in general. The question isn't when do you talk about it? The question is, what are you talking about when? So we are believers that when kids are on the changing table as infants, parents are talking to them, right? There's a huge learning curve there with language. And that's a great time to start naming body parts, right? In preschool, there's nothing wrong with talking about respecting your own space and respecting someone else's space. That's consent teaching. Like, it's all a part of the same big ball of yarn. It's just what specific topics do you cover when? And our short answer is you'll know when you've overstepped because they'll leave the room.
Ooh. And, I think that a really big one is, I remember my daughter was like, why does daddy have a tail? Because I think also as females, you address female parts a lot easier than you address the male parts, unless the males,
especially if you don't have a lot of boys in the house.
Yeah. And, but males seem to be very open about their boners and they seem very open with it, where females seem to kind of get a lot more private. Is that a generalization, or do you guys see something in this as their bodies are changing? We seem to have two different ways that they're changing and addressing themselves.
I mean, we see males and their body parts and their boners and their wet dreams and everything as like the punchline of a joke, right?
Yep.
So people are really comfortable making jokes about it and making fun of each other and all of that. But we see less kind of serious conversation about boys changing bodies. Whereas with girls, we see intense, serious conversations, and we see kind of shame and embarrassment or sort of hesitance, but people are talking to them about it, right? Because like, if you are having a period, then someone's got to help you like learn how to use the products and go and buy the products and all of that stuff. So our goal is actually that everybody is talking to everybody else about what's going on with their bodies in different ways, right? Like, think about the personalities in your house. Think about your personalities, your partner's personalities, your kids' personalities. And like, every kid is going to need a slightly different conversation. Some kids lead with humor. They're much more comfortable if you make it funny and silly. And some kids find that overwhelming and are like, no, just give me the facts and get out. Like, I don't need more than that. And so we like everybody to know what else is going on with other people, because then there's no shame and there's no embarrassment. And like, God willing, someday they're going to have a partner, a spouse, a somebody. And like, it kind of helps if you know what's going on with the other person's body and emotions. Cause if you're in the dark, there's no way you can be a good partner to that other person.
How do we know when they're starting puberty?
Okay. Winning question. We like to quote our favorite endocrinologist. That's a hormone doctor. Her name is Louise Greenspan. She says the first sign of puberty is a slamming door.
Oh, so it's a behavior.
Well, moods happen because the sex hormones that are in charge of puberty don't just circulate down in the body. They also circulate up around the brain, right? But if you're...
Sorry, my dog heard something loud upstairs and I don't know. I heard it too. I don't know.
I just kicked my dog out of the room. I was like, how the hell did you get in here? Get out.
Mine just like sneaks and usually does not move, but there was a big bang. I don't, there might be an intruder here, but we're
okay, you're on it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Okay. So the first physical sign of puberty in a girl is usually breast budding. So that's the beginning of breast growth. The first
budding.
Yeah.
Budding, like, you know, those very awkward, small, painful lumps under the nipple. Yeah. And sometimes there's only one because the two boobs don't talk to each other. And then everyone thinks it's breast cancer. Yeah, no. Yeah, it's not. It's called breast budding. And it like an elbow against a breast bud, you know, sends them to their knees. It's so painful. That's usually the first sign of puberty in a girl. The first sign of puberty in a boy is penile and testicular growth. Their penis and their testicles start to grow, which no one notices because they're also getting private and they're shutting the door and they're covering themselves up. And sometimes that's the only thing you see for like a year or 2 years. And so when my son went through puberty, I had no idea because he was being private, and I'm a pediatrician, but I didn't look. That's not your job. Your job is just to let the pediatrician take a look and let you know when they're in puberty.
Oh, and that's awkward
Don't
too.
even tell them what I do. Don't. She's like, it's not your job to look.
Well, now you have to tell us.
Natalie looks constantly. She's like, everyone show me your pubes. Let's see.
When I saw one of them get pubes once, I was like, wow, I did not expect that. That's earlier than I thought. And then the next one, it's been a couple of years, and I'm just like, you got any? Still none? Checking. No, I'm like, wow. All right.
I mean, I have to tell you a story. My younger brother was a late bloomer, and we were on vacation at the beach. I was 16 and he was 14, and we were like showering off at the outdoor shower. And you know how boys like pull their bathing suits out to get the water down. And he pulled his bathing suit out and he was, you know, hosing off down there. And I looked down and was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Your pubes. I swear to God, he has still not forgiven me. Like you're
in the right career, it seems.
5.
Seems you're in the right career. Talking about puberty. It's
clearly I'm still processing it because I did it so wrong with my younger brother. But some kids are like, great, fine, check out my pubes. I'm so proud of them. I'm so excited. Like there's no one size fits all because all the personalities are different. And like, also if they're growing up with you, they're used to like a lot of conversation, a lot of openness, a lot of jokes. And so they might be comfortable with it.
Right.
You know, so physically there's no age that puberty starts. But like because how long does puberty take?
Yes. How long does it last?
To happen?
A long time.
A really long time.
If you have a grade 3 who's getting buds, they might not get boobs till they're grade 8, right? Like, what does that?
Excellent question, because this is really what has changed over the last couple of generations. The average age for girls to start puberty is now between 8 and 9, right? 3rd to 4th grade. Half of all girls.
Wait, you have to say it the Canadian way. Grade 3 or grade 4.
Grade 4.
Yes, correct. Sorry.
We are guests in Canada.
We're guests in your country. Yes. The average age for boys is between 9 and 10. Okay. So this is average. This is 2 or 3 years earlier than it was when we all went through puberty.
Why?
Okay. I'll get to why in a second, but I'm going to get to the what for a sec because it's amazing. But it's not going any faster. It is in fact going slower because everything else takes much longer. In other words, if you look at periods, for instance, which are a middle marker of puberty. They happen somewhere in the middle of puberty. Okay. The average age used to be 12 and a half. It's about 12 and a quarter. It's changed by 3 months, but the start has changed by 3 years. So it takes the average girl 4 or 5 years to get from a first bud to a period. When we were going through it, it took like 2 years to get from a first bud to a period.
You're right.
Right? So puberty is stretching. That is not your imagination. And so the why is we have no idea. It is probably a combination of everything that we are putting into and onto our bodies. It's the cosmetics with all the endocrine disruptors in there. It's the foods we're eating. It's the drinks we're drinking. It's the air we're breathing. It's the stress we're experiencing, which is jacking up our cortisol levels. And that is shifting the start of puberty. But I've really good news. And the really good news is that the people who do this research don't think that it's going to start any earlier. They feel like we've hit kind of a rock bottom.
And do you, when we hear this like stat, is there anything bad about it lasting longer?
It's such a good question. And the answer is no.
And no one is
better.
No one's asked us that. The one question we do get is, does it mean menopause will start earlier if puberty started earlier? And we don't have the data on that, but we are really hoping that we will soon. I mean, here's what I'll say about the good thing about puberty lasting longer is that we as parents can get much better at parenting kids in puberty if we have more time, because we screw up all the time. And the more we practice making mistakes, taking a do-over, trying it again, the better we get at it. I mean, I'm a much better parent now of my older kids than I was of my younger kids because I've like practiced and I've gotten better. What we will say is that hormones, the rising and falling hormones that cause the mood swings that are fueling the entire process, they do start to level out. So they're not rising and falling in the same dramatic way all throughout puberty, which means that the mood swings are going to get better and more even. They don't disappear entirely. I mean, I still have mood swings and I'm 47. But they do get less dramatic. And so you will notice that your older teens are actually less moody than your teens, like really in the throes of those. Yes, exactly.
Do boys and girls biologically have the same hormonal mood? Like, are they, I feel like, because we all say, oh, the girl mood swing, like get ready for it. Do boys experience the same thing in behaviors?
Yeah. So the hormone that is most dominant in girl puberty is estrogen. And when it circulates up in the brain, it causes mood swings, not for every girl, but for many girls that are more outward. Like they cry at the drop of a hat. They yell at the drop of the hat. They're hysterical laughing, can't stop laughing at the drop of a hat, right? Boys, their puberty is dominated by testosterone. And when testosterone goes through their brain, we know that they are quicker to anger, or like real rage, actually, is what testosterone is associated with. But we also know, even though there's not one study that looks at this, which is very annoying to us, they're quieter. So the opposite of that rage is silence. They shut the door. They become monosyllabic. They grunt. That's a mood swing.
Yeah. So funny. I have a girl and then I have 3 boys, and one of my boys yesterday was like being just like, so like not reasonable about like what he had to do, like his homework and what he had to do and just like his life in general. And I was like, I so expect that kind of conversation from my daughter. But then I went into the kitchen. I'm like, I think that's his like hormones. Like he's not acting like himself, and he's acting like
a teenager.
Like he's acting like, I'm like, get your head on, you know. But I was like, I guess I expect it from her, but I was surprised by him.
Yeah, I mean the societal generalizations and stereotypes do a disservice to everybody. They do a disservice to girls because we're like, oh, girls are so dramatic. Oh, girls are so ridiculous, right? Like we're totally stereotyping girls unfairly. And we're not leaving room for boys to have their own mood swings, right? It's not just the purview of girls. It's the purview of all kids in changing bodies. Having said that, you can say like, hey, dude, I don't really love how you're talking to me right now. So can we like take a minute and then I'm going to come back to you with the same question? And I would just love a different tone of voice. And then normally they'll actually like laugh at themselves and be like, okay, totally fair. Like, give me a minute. Or they'll stomp out of the room and then come back a few minutes later. But if we engage with them whenever they're at that cresting moment, whether it's sobbing or anger or aggression or whatever it is, like that is not useful. Like everybody needs a minute when they're at that moment. I mean, we know we need a minute when we're like flipping out. So do they, and they need us to help them find that space.
Okay. I want to get into voice for a second specifically, because I feel like you said, girls kind of, you feel like they all grow together, and you look at a bunch of grade 8 girls and often 99% of them look the same. You look at grade 8 boys, there's some that are, look like they could be in grade 3 and ones that look like they could be men in university. So there's like, seems to be more discrepancy when things are going awry, right? So their friend group doesn't always resemble each other. Is it like common knowledge you're going to have wet dreams? Do they know this? Do they talk about, like, I feel like girls are like, I got my period, like they kind of share a little bit more maybe. Is this something that mama should be addressing? Do we have to sit down with our boys, like the husband, like help?
And all men just say to us is like, oh, did you figure it out? You find a sock, like a crusty sock on the floor? Like, I'm sorry, is this time for this? Do we need to discuss this? Like, how can we help the boys?
And why is masturbation so commonplace with boys? Like it's like they do it 15 times a day, and with girls it's like, you don't worry about that.
Okay, so what you've done is you've just highlighted some awesome stereotypes that we're going to smash down.
Thank you.
One of them is that everyone masturbates across the genders. Doesn't matter what your gender. It's just that we talk about it with regards to boys much more than we talk about it with regards to girls. We got to change that. The second one is that wet dreams feel like a third rail topic, but periods are not. That's silly too, because wet dreams are it's completely normal to have them. It's also completely normal not to. Wet dreams and masturbation, I want to just distinguish them for a second. Wet dreams are not sexual, or at least we don't think they're sexual. It is just having you just have semen come out of the penis at some point during deep sleep in the night, and boys wake up and there is a wet spot on their bed. And we write about it a lot and we talk about it a lot because sometimes they think they've peed in their bed, or they don't know, or they feel ashamed and they just cover it up in their bed. And it's really easy. Like they can just, strip the sheet off and wash the sheet and just take care of it. It's no big deal. And there's no judgment and there's nothing wrong with them.
How big is a spot? Like, is it huge?
No, it's usually pretty small. It's like probably, I don't know, the size of an Oreo cookie. How's that?
So they could make their bed and carry on.
They could, or they, we usually tell them like, just take a little damp washcloth and just sort of clean it up there if it's a small spot, or just strip the bed and we can show you how to wash the sheet. You just, no judgment. It's like wham, bam, and also do the dishes. By the way,
how many are there?
Some kids have none. Okay. Some kids have them every night or two for a little stretch, and some kids have them somewhere in between.
And I will say that men will tell us, even though they joke about it now and they say, oh, did you find a crusty sock or whatever? The number one most traumatizing or kind of weighty memory that men have of their own puberty is having had a wet dream and not knowing what it was.
Yeah.
And feeling ashamed, thinking they had wet their bed. Right. And if you're a 13-year-old boy, the idea of wetting your bed, if you don't already struggle with that issue, is a big deal. Or they think there's something wrong with them. So this is the exact reason why we have to talk to our boys as much as we talk to our girls. And it's not a 20-minute conversation. It can just be like, hey, dude, sometimes in the middle of the night, people with penises ejaculate we don't know why. But it's actually normal and it happens to a lot of people. And if it happens to you, you can come and tell me. I can teach you how to clean it up, how to change your sheets. We can talk about what underwear you're sleeping in because maybe something else would be comfortable. And that's it. It's like 4 sentences.
No, it does not wake them up. It's not an orgasm. Or at
Okay.
least
They feel wet.
But
Yeah,
they feel the
just-
wet. That's
Yeah.
that's how they know.
And then they roll over and they find a dry spot.
And when you get like a God, mom, like when they don't want to talk about it, okay?
Right.
What do we just try to have like just kind of like a passing conversation, or are we
Totally. Yeah, you can just say, it seems like you don't want to talk about it. I'm here to answer any questions you have when you're ready. Or it seems like you don't want to talk about it. Hey, it would really help me out if either you could take care of cleaning the sheets or just let me know when you need my help. It's just, that's the way you're modeling for them that you don't care. It's no big deal.
Right.
Okay. What about the penis playing when they're like constantly touching their penises?
I have three boys
I feel like that's
also.
also the start of puberty for boys when you just see that thing going to town, like even in the daytime with their shorts on. Is that something that is puberty focused or no?
I mean, so those of us who have lots of penises in our house, I have three boys also and one girl. And I mean that not in a derogatory term, like I'm not referring to them as penises, but they own penises.
Yeah.
It's okay to set some boundaries because like your kid, just like you tell them not to pick their nose and eat it in public, like you can also say like, hey, buddy, I know that feels so good and I'm sure it's super relaxing and you're just chilling out. But like when other people are around or when I'm telling you to go clean the dishes, I would really appreciate it if you took your hands out of your pants. And when we're in public, you're at the age where like actually you can do a little rearranging, but then the hand has to come out of the pants because
it's just sometimes this right above, like they're just like move it.
Or they're just like putting it in the pocket. What do they call it? Pool pocket. Like they're putting it in the pocket and then they're doing it around. The one thing that will actually help in this particular scenario where they're learning the boundary between like private and public and what they can do where is either older siblings who will tell them, hey, cut it out. Like that's embarrassing. Don't do it. Friends will be like, dude, that's gross. Take your hands out of your pants. Like we're in school. Or people like camp counselors, cousins, like older kids or peers are the ones who are going to get through to your kid on, playing with the penis, the nose picking, that it's time to use deodorant, that the BO has gotten to the point where it's like needs to get under control. All of that stuff is often helpful with peers.
Okay. But
sorry.
Can I just say one other rearrangement scenario? Have you heard about NARBs?
Oh, this is really important. NARBs.
Yeah. No reason boners. So boys, as they go through puberty, have spontaneous erections every 45 to 90 minutes. They just get erections and they have to rearrange in order for it to not be noticeable to everyone else. And the boys have lots of strategies. The most common one we hear about is moving an erect penis to 12 o'clock. So you basically tuck it up in the underwear band, but that requires a little bit of rearranging. You may be seeing that.
How do they all know how to fix it? I never knew this. How do they all know this? Like learn quickly.
So they talk to each other. I'm sure there's like on TikTok at this point, like a whole section on TikTok called NARBs, but they also may come to you and say, I think I need a new kind of underwear, because if they've been wearing, let's say, boxers for a while, that's not going to keep them in or up. So this may be the age to move to like boxer briefs, for instance. Or some of those like dry fit underwear that hold them in a little bit more. If you notice, like when you go in to wake your kid up in the morning and they're like, wait, don't come in, mom. No, not yet. That may be because they have, what the kids call morning wood. And they have an erection they don't want you to see. Our podcast producer gave us amazing advice when he was this age. He used to get erections on the way to school. He didn't know why. He couldn't control it. And he would have his mom, like, he'd just say, Mom, I need a minute. I can't get out of the car quite yet. I need to like let things settle down. So his advice was, if your kid is doing stuff that seems like slightly weird and you can't figure out why,
boner. Go with it.
It could be a boner and they might need a little guidance on how to manage.
It's a big question because you got to talk about hygiene, and it's a big question, a common parent about how do you get kids to care about their hygiene, or like girls and boys, like showering and putting on deodorant. And I don't know why they smell and they don't care.
It's our life's mission. It is really like, I tell you, and I'm not joking, because hygiene is so important. It turns out that good hygiene translates into all sorts of success stories in life, and poor hygiene actually really puts obstacles in your way. I mean, think about it. Like, you go to a job interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are totally disheveled and you smell, the likelihood that you're going to successfully get that job is less than if you pull yourself together, you look presentable, and you don't smell, because it signals, it virtue signals, this person has their act together. So when parents and the adults in kids' lives feel frustrated by hygiene, excellent, because this is a life skill that's really, really important. It's also biologically important. So one of the things that we do when we teach in the classroom is we simply teach them why soap works. They don't know. They think water washes their body. So they'll go stand in the shower and they'll be like, okay, do it. And they have no idea. And the science behind why soap works is super cool and super simple. And an 8-year-old can get it, like, no problem. So we teach them why it works and why you need to wash your body with soap, generally speaking, every 24 hours or so. And even for kids who have really sensitive skin who can't fully shower, like a little bit of a sponge bath in the super stinky areas, if you understand the science, you'll do it.
Okay, I love that. Now, as far as masturbation and the conversation around that, let's say you have, a teenage, okay, let's just start with boys. You have teenage boys. It hasn't come up. You haven't caught them. They haven't asked anything.
Oh God, you haven't caught them. Oh God.
Do you need to have a conversation with them about it?
Yes. I mean, so there's a couple parts of the conversation about masturbation. One is every human being deserves to know that there's a part of their body that just feels good when it's touched. And like, that's great to know on your own. It's also great to know because someday you may want to be in a loving, respectful, meaningful relationship with somebody else. And you want that person to know, hey, this feels good. No, this doesn't feel so good. And so feeling conversant and knowledgeable about your own body is super important. So there's nothing wrong with masturbation. Now, if masturbation gets in the way of like normal functioning, like going to soccer practice or getting up in the morning and going to school or going out and socializing, like, then that's a conversation to have about masturbation. And it's the conversation to have about porn, because kids use porn. They're exposed to porn at younger ages. And then when they get older, they might be using porn to masturbate. And there is a ton of research about using porn to masturbate. Kids become dependent on porn in order to ejaculate, in order, like if they're in person-to-person sexual interactions, they have trouble ejaculating because they depend on the type of eroticism in porn, which can be violent, extreme, aggressive, all of those things. And we want our kids ultimately, when they grow into adults, to have healthy sexual relationships, but a dependence on porn in order to masturbate, in order to feel aroused, is not great for future relationships.
So you're talking about not watching porn while like hold off on porn as long as you can.
Yeah, because listen, kids are going to masturbate. That's normal. For eons, people have masturbated and there's nothing wrong with it. But we don't want the narrative of porn to dictate what kids imagine will be their future sexual relationships and how they interact with other people and what they find arousing. And the porn that they can access is really extreme. It's not, it's not the ethical, consensual porn that some people can buy. It is extreme. It is violent. And they can't help being aroused by it because that's a human reaction. And yet it's not a healthy narrative for them to use as the sort of pathway towards sexual relationships.
So we need the magazines back, is what you're saying. We need the magazines back.
We miss the Playboy magazines. Yes. The one little corner with one little boob that someone ripped out of their dad's Playboy magazine. Yes, I know.
Is there something that we're giving them? Like, if they're obviously naturally curious, like.
Yeah, but you can't curate your kids' sexual history, right? I mean, that's the other piece of it. So it's really complicated. So
and it's a great question. It is a great question. And we get that question all the time because people are like, okay, but how do I counteract it? So Cara, how do we counteract
So
it?
you counteract it with conversation, and it's lots of conversations, and it's non-judgmental, non-shaming, non-demonizing conversations, just very matter of fact. We have lots of scripts for people, but it should get to the point where, your house looks like my house, where it's like, hey guys, how was school? And let's just talk about porn one more time. And they're like, oh my God, would you please pass the string beans? Not again. I mean, it's just, it's not about it. The message is, I want you to write your own sexual story. I don't want someone else to tell you what it's supposed to look like or what it's supposed to feel like.
And even more, like, think about the bodies they might see in porn, right? They are waxed within an inch of their life. Every orifice is bleached. They have full on spray tans. They have unrealistic body parts, right? The sizes of the penises or the sizes of the breasts, or maybe the female actors have had labiaplasty where they have surgically had their labia made to look completely different. And so we need to let our kids know, like, hey, if someone shows you porn, just so you know, the person may not have any pubic hair, but in real life, people actually grow pubic hair. They may choose to remove it, but it grows. And so if you see that and you've never seen another naked body, we just want you to know that that's actually normal to actually have hair grow there. I know you guys are like, oh my God.
No, we're not. No, we're good. I mean, I have one question back to the beginning. You know how when we said that the period usually comes in the middle of puberty? Yeah. Now the puberty is extended. If it's, let's say it's 6 years of puberty, will the period still come in the middle?
No. I mean, yes, but the front end run up is a lot slower and longer. Okay. So the normal range to get a period is anywhere from 8 to 16 years old. So I want you to just stop and think about someone who is 16 and getting their period for the first time. That is not considered worrisome, but someone else might have had it for half their life already. Wow. How crazy is that? So the range is phenomenally long, but generally speaking, the run up to getting a period is much longer. Now, the other question is, how do you know when they're out the other end of puberty, right? How do you know it's over? And the way we describe it is, it's kind of like menopause. It's kind of like you have to be over for a while in order to understand that it's over. So you have to have been done growing. The curves have to be fully filled out. Maybe the shoulders have gotten broader. Maybe the hips have gotten wider. The fat deposition, the breast growth. I mean, all these things will change throughout life. Boobs change size every single day. So it's very hard to say, oh, my boobs have stopped growing, I must be out of puberty. And then the next week you need a bigger bra size because you're retaining water because you're about to get a period, right? So it's sort of the general, when you look back, everything is kind of at a baseline when you can say, I'm out of it. Brain development, the ability to think like an adult and make smart, consequential decisions consistently, doesn't happen until nearly 30. Yeah. So you are well done with puberty way before your brain can consistently be smart about what it's doing.
Cara always says that explains your 20s.
It explains everything.
I wasn't even making the right decisions when I got married and had a baby.
I know. Join the club. Maybe that's why we married them and had children, because we didn't have the consequential brain yet.
While you're talking about the brain, I know we have to go. You've been so generous with your time, but there was a question last night in the common parent, like in the chat, about the teenagers being so consumed by themselves and not being able to be thankful for their parents and what they're doing for them. And I had to take a minute and be like, I think that's developmentally appropriate that they can't appreciate in hindsight what you've done for them.
After everything I do for you all day long. So is that
they're so consumed.
That argument doesn't work. So brain research tells us that their peers light up their limbic systems, right? The pleasure, risk, and reward center of their brains, which is fully developed by middle school. That is lit up by their peers. You know who doesn't light up the risk, reward, and pleasure center? Us. So the fact that they don't appreciate us, the fact that we feel invisible, the fact that we feel ignored, yes, they can't totally help it. That doesn't mean we can't say, hey, I just like drove an hour, picked you up, fed you, drove another hour, dropped you off somewhere else. Can I please get a thank you? Yes, we can say that to them. Does it mean next time they're going to turn around and say, thank you so much. I so appreciate you do everything for me. And I just love you so much. And I never want to leave your side. No, of course not, because the brain is still focused on their peers. Let's get to the next thing with my friends. You're irrelevant except as an Uber driver. So it is developmentally appropriate. I will tell that person who feels really unappreciated who asks that question, it gets better. The older teens and the kids in their 20s, they do turn around and say, thank you. I love you. And thank you for the things you did for me 10 years ago when I never thanked you and I was such a jerk. So they do gain perspective.
Totally.
Don't lose hope. It does eventually happen. In the moment, it feels really crappy, but it does get better.
You guys, I wish I could move in with you.
Or more than you could move in with us, our kids.
Amazing.
We're coming. Just name the date. We'll be there.
I want to link everywhere that you are. I think you're such a resource for parents who are really genuinely curious about like how to do what's next. They are going to ask, how do you know when they're done growing? Because you say hips growing. Like, do you ever really know? Like when they're 21, I'm assuming you know they're done.
Yeah, I mean, really, truly, we have this saying in medicine that the retrospectoscope is our most powerful tool. It allows you to look back in time, and its vision is 20/20. So you really only know when you look back. But once they're done with their height gain, okay, and once their voice has settled into its new pitch, and once their skin cycle, their acne is a little bit mellower. And once all of their hair growth is fully established, and once their periods are somewhat regular, and once they're not getting erections spontaneously all the time, and you can say, hallelujah, we're done. And by the way, your brain needs 10 more years to be.
Oh
fully.
my gosh. And the book is for parents.
Yes.
Teens, it's not for teens.
No,
they can read it.
They can read it. We wrote the book so that a kid could grab the chapter on brain science or the chapter on periods and understand it. It's not written for like a grade school kid, but it's totally comprehensive. Cara is amazing at writing science in a way that makes it interesting and funny. We are empathetic. We're not judging kids or railing against kids so they won't feel attacked. It's a great resource to trade back and forth, right? So if your kid is like, why the hell am I so moody? I'm so confused. You can say, hey, here's a chapter on mood swings. Read it. And then let's talk about it. I read it and I think it's really helpful.
And every chapter ends with an essay written by a kid between 18 and 22 about their experience in that specific stage and what the adults in their life could have done differently. And let me tell you, their voices are amazing.
They're beautiful, beautiful essays. They're really, really moving. So it's a great thing for a kid to read if they're wondering, am I normal? And we like to say—
And you can buy this book anywhere you can get a book.
Yeah. So in Canada, it will be out definitely at independent booksellers and also on Amazon. It should be out. Pub Day is October 10th. So it should be available to folks on that day and going forward. And we hope it will make people laugh too. It's funny. It's joyful. It's optimistic. It's totally your vibe, right? Like, we got this, we can do this. We're walking around here without any shame or embarrassment. And that's really our goal in writing this, is for people to feel empowered to go forth and have these conversations with their kids.
Well, thank you so much for everything you do. I can't wait to have, instead of movie night, we'll just pass around the book one by one
and talk about wet dreams, masturbation, and all the things in between. Can't wait.
100%.
Phenomenal.
Thank you so much. We'll link everywhere.
You guys. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Bye.